This is Jeff Edwards, and you should be watching the Crew Reviews.
Hey, Mike.
Yo.
Let's raise a glass. We have Jeff Edwards in the house.
Yes. It's about damn time.
Mm-hmm.
About damn time.
So, Jeff, welcome to the Crew Reviews.
Yep.
As Mike said, this interview is a long time in coming with COVID and scheduling issues, but we are excited you're here to talk about your latest thriller, The Damocles Agenda. That being said, for our viewers who might just be discovering you or who may not know too much about you, would you mind giving us and the audience a little bit about your background before we start talking about the book?
Right.
Okay, sure. Be glad to. I'm a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. I was a sonar technician, stationed aboard mostly destroyers, chasing submarines.
Right.
And for anybody who's not in the know, a destroyer chasing a submarine is like a dog chasing a car. You're probably not going to catch it, and if you do, you're pretty much screwed. So
Hold on to the bumper.
If you've ever seen The Hunt for Red October, what Jonesy does in that movie, that's what I did, except we weren't nearly as good at it or as cool. But it's like that's kind of what I did.
That's pretty cool.
I spent 23 years in the Navy, and then got out and went to work consulting for the Department of Defense still. Mostly the Navy, sometimes some Air Force and Army stuff. And now I write books.
That you do, brother. That you do. Definitely write some books. And as I said earlier, we're here to talk about you and about your impressive career, but we're also to highlight this book, The Damocles Agenda. So would you mind giving the audience a high altitude glimpse of what they can expect when they're cracking open this novel?
The first thing, the high altitude wise, the first thing they could expect is high altitude.
Yes,
it is.
A significant portion of the story takes place aboard the International Space Station.
Yep.
It came about because of several things, but the book came about because of several things. One, because I've been reading about the Russian Federation's advances in electromagnetic pulse weapons, and the fact that the United States, even our nuclear silos and stuff, are only hardened to about 50 volt-meters per second. And it turns out that or 50,000 volt-meters per second. And it turns out that the latest generation of Russian weapons can basically pump out about 4 times that on the periphery of their area of effect.
That's crazy.
So they can basically zap anything we've got.
Right.
My second thought was, wow, what's the worst possible place they could put that for us? And that ended up being the International Space Station. So ultimately, the story ends up being about the Russian Federation hijacking the International Space Station, and they put a test article on board that appears to be an electromagnetic engine, an EM drive, electromagnetic propulsion, and in fact, it's an electromagnetic pulse weapon. And they start basically zapping cities and threatening to take over the world. And they give the United States 72 hours to agree to disarm itself.
Oh,
yep. Yeah. So they use a weapon of mass destruction to get us to
get rid of our
weapons of mass destruction.
They do indeed. It's a little bit funny. First of all, let me just ask you this, since we're the cameras are rolling and everything.
Yeah.
Should I rein in my inner sailor, or am I allowed to actually use big people words?
No, let's use chief talk here.
Okay, roger that.
And hand gestures.
Okay, the reason that I'm asking that is because I have something when I'm dealing with technical resources, when I'm working with engineers or somebody, and I'm asking them dumb questions and things, and then I'll go off and write something, and I'll come back and I will describe to them the Jeff Edwards bullshit meter. And the Jeff Edwards bullshit meter goes like this: 0 is no bullshit whatsoever. 10 is absolute. Everything I wrote is bullshit. that I'm absolutely wrong in every possible way I could be wrong.
Right.
I'm willing to accept a 3 or a 4 on the bullshit meter, because you're allowed to take some you're allowed to take some artistic license with it when you're writing stuff. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not writing technical manuals. I'm writing thriller novels.
Right.
I'm gonna bend reality a little bit here and there. But what I don't want to do is have people who happen to be experts in particular fields looking at my work and going, "Oh, what kind of crack has this guy been smoking?"
Close the book.
I want them to look at it and go, "Yeah, that might not be quite the way we do it, but it's not ridiculous. It's okay."
Yep.
So I happened to be working with a particular scientist. His name was William Radasky, Dr. William Radasky, and he was one of the guys who was actually on the one of the leaders of the National EMP Task Force that was actually looking into the danger of electromagnetic pulse weapons to the United States infrastructure. And I showed him some once I'd finished an initial draft, the pieces I was worried about, the pieces where the electromagnetic pulse weapon actually appears. I explained to him the concept of the bullshit meter, and I said, "Where does this fall on the bullshit meter?" And he said, "Oh, it's about a -5."
Oh, really?
He said, "Oh, he goes, the threat is much worse than the way you've painted it. It's absolutely real." He goes, "And while you might have messed around with, you might have played around with some technologies a little bit around the edges, this is way scarier than you think it is. You've undersold the threat."
Oh,
And I went,
fantastic.
okay. That makes me feel great and horrible at the same time.
Yeah.
It makes me
Dude.
Getting my
happy as an
shovel
author, and it makes me
Montana
want to
property.
stock up on canned peaches and ammunition.
Yeah, bro.
I know.
After reading this and knowing there's what Brad Thor likes to call the faction. You can't really tell where the fiction starts and the facts begin, or vice versa. Dude,
I love that term.
That's effed up.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's scary.
Well, the EMP technology, I mean, it's really a hidden doomsday device from the general public. I mean, some people have heard about it, but they don't really. They still consider the bad guy with the bullets, and the rifle as being the end all. But I don't think the general public realizes the implication of an EMP strike would have on society as a whole. Is really almost at the same levels of nuclear strikes. So, in your estimation, do you think that the U.S. government is doing enough to develop countermeasures to what's going on?
I think there's a lot of people working awfully hard on it. I don't know if I'd say that it was enough, but I think there's a great deal of focus on it. Some interesting things come out of that report. I've got a report. I've got a copy of it around somewhere. It's called something or other, National Task Force Analysis of the Threat of Russian EMP Weapons on U.S. Infrastructure, or something like that. It's very direct. It's basically Russian weapons, U.S. infrastructure, what can happen kind of thing. Yeah. One of the things that they predict in there is if there was a nationwide, if there was an EMP attack that affected us nationwide, that 10% of Americans would survive the first year.
10%.
10%.
It's 30 million people. That's it.
Yeah. Between people who, because you got to remember, it isn't going to be just cars shutting down. It's going to be communication shutting down. Cell phones don't work. Water doesn't come out of the tap.
Yeah, water doesn't work.
Hospitals, and there will be some vehicles and everything that will be operational. The older vehicles that don't have electronic ignition, they don't have chips in them, they don't have, you go back some 1960s vehicles that haven't been retrofitted with newer equipment. Some of them might still be operational, but there's only going to be a small percentage of vehicles operating. There's going to be no telephones. There's going to be, there's going to be no radio.
Stone Age.
There's going to be no computers. There's going to be, and by the way, the majority of our, all of our stocks and the majority of our banking and everything are kept in electronic records. When that stuff gets wiped out, we don't know who's got how much money. Your bank account's empty. Think about all the people who depend on refrigerated medications every day.
Sure.
That 72 hours from now aren't going to be able to get any.
Yeah, if you're insulin
in their fridge goes bad.
Yeah, if you're insulin dependent, you're not going to last very much longer.
It's a giant show called Alone, US.
Yeah,
that's some scary stuff.
And in the story, the way it's set up, because they go after us first, they demonstrate their power by, and you guys remember this from the story,
Right.
by zapping Canaveral,
Yep.
zapping Canaveral, Florida. They hit the heart of the U.S. manned space program. That's one thing they do. And the second thing they do is they demonstrate to us and to everybody else that they can take a city out that fast, largely without killing anybody directly, but ultimately killing a lot of people over time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, airplanes fall
Planes
out of the sky,
dropping, yeah.
and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. When I was working on this, I was working with a Hollywood producer and working on a screenplay for it, and he says, "Oh yeah, like elevators dropping." I'm like, "No, elevators don't do that. They're
Brakes.
specifically designed. They're going to stop, and
Yeah.
then you got to figure out how to get out of the box without the electricity. But elevators are not going to, because he just
Right.
thought that was such a brilliant. Elevators are going to. Nope, that's not how that.
That would make for a good movie, good television, but in reality, it's the PlayStation that stops working
Yeah.
that would freak out half of society, like my
Well,
son in particular.
You're,
And in the
you're
story.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's the I remember reading somewhere or hearing somewhere, it was on a television show, I don't remember which one. Someone said, and it was a fictional character. So the line was obviously written by a writer, and I don't have any facts to back it up necessarily, but it sounds correct. Because he says something along the lines of historically, it's always been when something small that works consistently every day fails that we have the largest disruptions in civilization.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's true, but it sounds true.
It definitely sounds true. All right, so there is somewhat of a symbiotic relationship between private business and NASA when it comes to space technology.
Oh,
In
yeah.
the Damocles Agenda, you write about Apogee Launch Systems. It's a private company building an experimental spaceship, the Corvus. It reminded me of a mix between like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic's space plane, Spaceship Two. And it had me thinking over the last 50 years, NASA has become exponentially more risk adverse. Hence, the timelines for returning to the moon and possible Mars missions keep getting pushed further and further back. So how important do you think, Jeff, are the Elon Musks, the Jeff Bezos, the Richard Bransons for the future of space exploration?
I think they're absolutely critical. And it's funny that you should mention Richard Branson, because I actually had in mind kind of Burt Rutan and Scale.
I love that guy. He has
Composites.
Scale Composites, yeah.
And same kind of millionaires instead of billionaires, and building really, in the big scheme of things, what amounts to space launches on a shoestring.
Yep.
It's funny, if you go back and watch old footage, if you go back and watch old movies about the space program and what have you, NASA basically took it for granted that critical things were going to fail on every single launch. It's like they trained the Apollo crews to, they would get in the module, in the module simulator, and they'd go for hours and hours and hours and hours on missions, and then everything would be smooth as pie, and then suddenly somebody flip a switch, and their
O2 scrubbers stop
hydrogen
working.
fuel cells stop working,
Or that,
or thrusters start firing on one side of the spacecraft, and they go into gimbal lock, or something like that, to see if these guys, because they were counting on the fact that critical pieces of equipment were going to fail at unexpected times, and that was just part of the risk of doing business.
Yep.
It's like at the beginning of the movie Apollo 13, and apparently this really happened. They had one of the engines on the second stage, I think the second stage booster of the Saturn V, one of the 5 engines didn't light off. They ended up with 4 engines, and they were trying to figure out whether or not to abort. And they finally went, no, we're just going to burn a little extra long on this. And then right after they do that, the Jim Lovell character played by Tom Hanks says something like, well, we got our glitch for this mission out of the way.
Yeah,
And the
gosh.
thing is, I think every Apollo mission had significant glitches in it. They understood that the people who went up there were surfing the razor's edge. And I think NASA has gotten more and more and more afraid of the consequences of an accident over time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we've had enough real world examples to show how dangerous it is. I mean, the shuttle was flown 19 times before the Challenger exploded.
Right.
And every single shuttle that went up came down safely right up, right up until Columbia. So it's.
Yeah, and then it kills funding if somebody has an accident,
definitely.
where in the past it was just an expected event.
That's absolutely right.
Well, all right.
So back to your question, Chris, I think people like Elon Musk and Burt Rutan and what have you. I mean, a lot of people are, beating them up in the tabloids. Oh,
Yeah.
it's billionaires who want to go to space, and why aren't they?
Why are we spending this money? And
What a lot of people don't realize is most of the power, literally most of the energy in our solar system is outside of the atmosphere, not inside of it.
Yep.
The energy that can be had from the sun, which is by far the strongest, the most powerful source of energy, is orders of magnitude greater than all the fossil fuel in the world combined. That stuff's not even a popcorn fart in the wind compared to what's available, really just outside the atmosphere. You get up into the asteroid belt and places like that, it's like all the things that we want are up there.
Nickel,
gold, zinc, antimony, nickel, iron,
gold.
in amounts that we can't even imagine.
Yep. Bring one of those asteroids and put it in orbit around Earth.
And it will be expensive to get there and difficult to get there. But there was a time when it wasn't just expensive to cross the ocean; it was impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
And we figured it out. That's what we do.
Well, let's put your chief hat on for 1 second.
Okay.
We're going to bring it back down to the surface of the Earth here. It's been since probably World War II since we've had peer-to-peer adversary or parity adversary, from a naval standpoint in conflict, with China spending billions to upgrade their force projection potential from their navies and the hypersonic technologies. Are we ready for what comes from a parity standpoint, like the South China Sea and Taiwan? Do you think our Navy is prepared enough for what China's going to be unleashing, in the decades to come?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that. The first thought is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was that said it. I've heard it attributed to Chessie Puller and a bunch of other people, but I don't know who actually said it originally. If you ever find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics suck.
Yeah. Right.
You always want to have the upper hand if you can get it. You want the numerical advantage, you want the technological advantage. And I'll give you a Jeff Edwardsism. This is a Jeffism. And if I stole this from somebody, I can't find it anywhere else in writing. And I remember I used to write columns for military.com once upon a time. I used to write a column back when I was still a chief called The View from the Deck Plate, because everybody else who was writing for military.com were officers and flag level officers. And I was like, I figured we need one enlisted guy out there.
The working man's view.
Yeah, just the view from the deck plate. And I used to write this column called The View from the Deck Plate. And one of the things I said, and it's one of those things where the instant that your fingers finish typing it, you go, wait a minute, that actually sounds like it's a little bit profound. And I don't know whether or not it's profound, but I think it's true. And that is the only more expensive thing than having the best equipment on the battlefield is having the second best equipment on the battlefield.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I could tell you this, the Navy is preparing hard to treat China as a peer or near peer competitor.
Yeah.
The Navy has got that first and foremost on their mind. That's not to say they're ignoring other threats, but they're thinking that's the alligator closest to the boat.
Yeah.
And that's the alligator that's taking steroids right now. So
they got more ships than us, and I think they just launched a drone aircraft carrier, right?
I know they've launched a new aircraft carrier. Don't know any details about it yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it, that is an inevitable development. To ultimately be able to put unmanned fighter aircraft anywhere you want them.
Yeah,
oh, by the way, since we're talking about aircraft and fighter aircraft, this right here,
yes,
it's called Fighter Pilot Red.
Oh, look at that!
It's put out by a vineyard where the owner of the vineyard is his name is Sherm, is former F-4J pilot from Vietnam. Lots of carrier launches, lots of combat and everything else. Anyway, fighter pilots love this stuff. I love this stuff. And the cool thing is,
writing it down.
I work with another author, a guy named Kevin Miller, who is phenomenally good. He writes, if Top Gun were a novel and were written by somebody who wasn't blowing smoke up your butt, and don't get me wrong, I love Top Gun. I love the original Top Gun. I love Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see it again right now. I would, it's fantastic. But in terms of realism and accuracy and everything. This is an actual F-18 fighter pilot, Top Gun guy who was just an absolute badass. And I helped him get his first couple of books across the finish line when he was working on them. The first one was Raven 1. And I read this book and I'm like, I've never seen anything like this in my life.
That's awesome.
This was, it was, I mean, the stuff about night carrier landings was like the scariest thing. One of the scariest things I've ever read.
Can't imagine. Those guys have such balls, man.
Yeah.
So he finishes the book and he gets it published and the book starts doing well. And then he says, hey, I'm sending you something. And he sent me 2 bottles of Fighter Pilot Red.
Oh.
And he keeps doing that whenever he writes a new novel. He'll send 2 bottles of Fighter. So one goes in my collection and I drink one.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I got a couple of sons who are going that route. We'll see when they get old enough.
Yeah, they're gonna be fun.
Nice 2012 Fighter Pilot Red.
I just wrote it down. I'm gonna be looking it up.
It is quite good.
Ooh.
So currently NASA is forbidden from working with the Chinese. Obvious reasons why, but not so with the Russians. In fact, with the SpaceX Dragon capsule, NASA astronauts were forced to ride on the Soyuz in order to get up to the space station for several years. But considering everything that's happened, i.e. with Ukraine, do you think we continue to work with the Russians in space?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of rhetoric. The head of Roscosmos has come out with some threats about how they're going to take their part of the station and go away, or what have you.
Make another mirror.
There's a lot of interesting things going on, and some of it comes out in the book a little bit. Some of it comes out in Damocles. One of them is that because we were launching from, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Baikonur, Kazakhstan, because that's where the Russian Soyuz were launching from. The actual orbital pattern, orbital path of the International Space Station is designed to align with that. So we had to basically, when we were sending shuttle missions up there, because they were launching the overwhelming majority of the missions to the space station, and for many years the only missions. We built the entire orbital pattern around Russia's convenience. Mission Control Moscow actually controls the maneuvering of the station.
Oh, still? Is that still to this day?
I don't know if they still do, but they did as of the time I was writing the book.
Wow, that's a crazy thought.
Let me rephrase that. I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
That is according to somewhere on that shelf over there. And I'm not even looking
Research,
yes. Shelf over there is a green softback book that is called the International Space Station Technical Familiarization, something or other.
I think I have a question about that. But go on.
And there's and according to that, Mission Control Moscow still control, or at least as of the time that was written a few years ago, Mission Control Moscow still controlled the maneuvering of the International Space Station.
Wow.
So I guess we're tied in for a while.
There are huge parts of the ISS, the Russian part of the station, where I'm not sure if the American and European parts of the station can survive absent the Russian parts. If they decided to actually separate the station, I'm not sure that the two halves can survive independently. Possibly they can. It'll take smarter people than me to answer that question. But big scheme of things, if we don't get it back together, I don't know what the future of the International Space Station is, but it doesn't look good.
Yikes. All right, back to some writing here. You two knuckleheads share a very amazing writing award, the Clive Cussler Adventure Writers Competition, and the Clive Grandmasters. Chris is the most recent winner.
Yes, he is, and rightfully so, by the way.
Thanks.
And I know you're getting ready to ask a question, but I just want to say this. I have been a judge in the Clive Cussler Grandmaster Award competition in the past. I don't do it now because I can't give it the time that it deserves. So I generally only look at the last three finalists. And after having looked at the last 3 finalists, as fantastic as all of them were, as soon as I found out, because they have to tell me a little bit in advance, because I'm the guy who contracts to get the trophies made and things like that. So I find out a little bit, and I don't find out much in advance, but I definitely know before anybody who's not on the inside knows. When the decision's been made. I did the happy dance all over my condo when I found out you won. Because it's like you Drone Kings knocked it out of the ball.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
Well, we were doing a happy dance at the actual
every level that it was possible to crush it. So
kudos
to you.
Yeah,
thanks, brother.
Well, for you, Jeff, how did you become aware of that competition? Well, I mean, I'll preface it by saying you were the inaugural winner.
He
by the way.
was, yeah.
But how did you actually become aware of the competition? And then maybe you can expound on how winning that has really affected your career as an author.
Well, a variety of things. Here's how I became aware of it. First of all, it's put out by the Clive Cussler Collector Society, and they work closely with Clive's family. And when Clive was alive, he was a big part of that. And he came to, until he got up there in age, he came to basically every one of the conventions until I think it started to take a toll on his health. And still his family, Dirk and Dana, and all of Clive's family members are still huge parts of this. Are still deeply wedded. And in fact, it's the Cussler family that still writes the award checks. Wow. So when you got that nice little award check, it came from the Cussler.
Came from the Cussler family. Yeah.
And we spent it all.
So I didn't know about any of this. I was a huge Clive Cussler fan. I mean, I had been since I stumbled across Vixen 03 in a drugstore when I was shortly after I joined the Navy, and I went, "Oh my God, I love this!" It's like I basically read the paperback straight through. So I've been a huge fan, and I had every Clive Cussler book that there was, and in fact, I've got so much Clive Cussler up above here that it ain't funny.
Yeah, over
there.
But I had no idea there was a Clive Cussler Collector Society, and I had no idea they were doing a writing competition. None of that. But my first novel, and at the time it was called Torpedo. Eventually, it got rebranded as Sea of Shadows for a reason that we don't have to go into. But it originally came out as Torpedo, and Blackstone Audio had produced the audiobook. And I had never had a book out on audiobook before, and they had actually come out with a library edition that was that in terms of the packaging and everything was nicer than this. It's fantastic. Well, they gave me like 5 free copies of that as the author of the book.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm hanging on to these forever. And I went to, I was doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble with another author named Gary Moore. And Gary had a fan, a guy that everybody called Papa Jim. And but little guy in a wheelchair. He was had a Vietnam veteran who had some serious health complications due to Agent Orange and some other things. He was in a wheelchair, couldn't see very well, almost blind, but sweetest guy. Anyway, so this other author I'm working with, Papa Jim had been so excited to hear about his novel that he wanted to read it, but his eyes weren't good enough. So he said, well, if it ever comes out an audiobook, let me know. Well, Gary Moore didn't have any prospects of having the audiobook produced. But what he did was he reached out to his local college, to their like theater arts or whatever it is team, their radio team. And he said, hey, do you guys want to do this as your senior project? So he had this college record the book as an audiobook, and they acted out the parts and everything. It was very cool. And he recorded it literally for this one guy, which they all got their grade from it and everything else. So he's giving that to Papa Jim. And my now ex-wife, my former wife, was at the book signing and everything else. And she leans over and whispers in my ear, give him a copy of the audiobook. I said, are you crazy? I don't know this guy. I met this guy 35 seconds ago. You know, this is
one of your 5 copies.
This is the $150 kind of library presentation. I don't know this guy from Adam. And she's like, just give it to him. So I said, okay. So I gave it to him. And I gave him my business card, and I forgot about it. He calls me about a week later, and he said, and he asks my permission to share the audiobook with some friends of his. And I said, dude, it's yours. Share it with anybody you want to. So about another 2 weeks goes by. He calls me again. He says, I really enjoyed the book. I shared it with a few friends and everything else. They'd like to invite you to come out to the Clive Cussler Collector Society convention in
was it Phoenix?
No, it was in Charleston, South
Oh, yeah.
Carolina.
Oh, okay.
In fact, we actually got to go see the Hunley before the Confederate
yeah.
submarine Hunley
Oh,
in the
nice.
conservation center before other people were even allowed
Dude,
to see it.
that's
It was very cool.
that's a whole nother story. That thing's cool.
Anyway, so I went there and he said, well, bring some books and you can do a book signing. I'm like, I'm not bringing books to sign at a Clive Cussler convention. I'm going to look like an idiot. He's like, bring some. So I brought, I figured I'll maybe need, 10 or 15. I brought a case and I sold them out before the bus left for the, it's like by the time I got to the book signing, I was signing books that were already sold. They were just gone. And, and they said, hey, we love your book. We're next year we're doing this adventure writers competition, the Grandmaster award competition. We'd like to invite you to enter. Well, first of all, I made lifelong friends there. It's like some of my favorite people in the world are members of the Clive. It's like that's like going home to family, seeing those people. So I love that. I love those people. It's like they're half of them could call me up and ask for a kidney, and I'd say which one.
Yeah.
And
Mike and I have met those people, and
we did.
They're
rabid
like
fans.
it's literally like a tight knit family. Not blood, but like it's family. It's crazy.
Yeah.
How cordial and friendly everybody is, and they have relationships like you're talking about that go back years,
decades.
Go back decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, it's amazing. And the thing is, it's if you think about it, it's perfect for people like us because it's a tight knit bunch of very nice, very smart people who like to read.
They like to read,
and drink. So it's like it works out very.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was.
Mike and I, when we were there, we fit right in. It was.
We were like, oh, this is a good crew.
Anyway, so what they did the first year is they once they got down to the finalists, they actually I don't remember where it is they put them, but they made the at request you could get them. I don't remember where they made them available, or maybe they just emailed them to us. They let us see the other novels we were up against.
Yeah.
And one of them was called The Island by a guy named Pete Reagan. I don't remember what the other one was, but I'm looking at these going, oh man, there's no way I'm winning this. There's no way I'm winning this. So it's like, I literally, have you ever seen Sanford and Sons?
Oh yeah.
Fred Sanford's Elizabeth Honey, I'm coming to join you.
Yeah,
there are pictures of me looking like that, clutching my heart with one hand up in the air, like I'm having a cardiac when Clive Cussler opened the envelope and announced me as the winner. It's like
that's
I
got to
could
be
not
the
have been any
coolest
more
thing.
shocked than I was.
So cool.
That's
Definitely
very cool.
So Jeff, your books are what I like to call Clancy-esque. They're action-packed techno-thrillers.
Yep.
And the Damocles Agenda, you provide readers with an insight into some really high-tech equipment, and you even got your hands on the NASA International Space Station Familiarization Astronaut Training Manual. First, how does someone get their hands on that kind of resource material? And B, I'm sure there were some amazing nuggets in that document. And this is more like the writer side of it. How can a writer know when what to include helps propel the story forward, and what might just like bog the story down and just techno babble stuff?
Right.
That's an interesting question, and it's a great question. Now, with regards to where to get it, believe it or not, one of the people who helped me, and I don't know if you ever looked at the acknowledgements page, one of the people who helped me was an actual former shuttle commander, and he put me onto some people and some contacts, and I made a couple of phone calls, and they said, believe it or not, you can actually get this thing. It's hard to find, but you can actually sometimes get this thing on Amazon. People who have had copies in the past have sold them on Amazon, used copies. And I said, sign me up. And I went looking for it, and I found one. And
that's crazy.
Wow.
But in terms of the other part, in terms of kind of how knowing what to put in and what not to put in, I have two kind of personally, I have two things that drive it. One is it essential or helpful to the story, to understanding the story?
Yeah.
And the second one is, if it isn't, is it just so damn cool? And that you can't help but share it because they're not going to get this anywhere else.
Right. I know that feeling. Yep.
I like people to go, holy shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? A little education thrown in there.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Jeff, you're part of a publishing team called Brave Ship Books.
Yes, indeed.
So, can you tell our audience a little bit more about Brave Ship and what types of books that you promote?
Brave Ship is kind of an attempt to do something that I think needs to have been around for a long time. A lot of people, there's kind of two middle extremes in people's minds sometimes.
Right.
There's, you're either with a major publishing house or you're some guy working out of his kitchen or his garage. And there's the bad part, the good part about working with a major publishing house is you tend to get exposure, there's gravitas associated with it and everything else. The bad part about it is first of all, you have very, very little control over the book. I know a guy who wrote a fantastic thriller novel, sold it to a major publisher, and it's about the largest cruise ship ever built in history. It's enormous. And on the cover, they've got a little dinky yacht that looks like it might be 125 feet long, probably sleeps 9. And
he has
said,
no
hey,
say in that. Yeah.
These things don't match. And they said, shut up, that's the cover. So, so you lose some creative control there. You lose creative control. The other thing is you a lot of times lose your rights, lose your rights for an extended period of time. But the flip side of the coin is that's where 90% of the books that everybody loves comes from, myself included. Most of the books I've ever read came from major publishing houses.
Yeah.
So there are upsides and downsides. When you get to be Clive Cussler, when you get to be Stephen King, when you get to be J.K. Rowling, when you get to be Tom Clancy, your agents can dictate much, much better and friendlier contracts. But when you're when you're a mid-list author or below, when you're breaking into the business, a lot of people get seriously screwed with their pants on.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the industry. But if you go the other way, it's just you.
Yeah.
It's just you, and you look like some guy who couldn't cut it anywhere else. So I started having a conversation with 3 or 4 other authors, including some Clive Cussler co-authors, including a couple of Tom Clancy co-authors, including people who have been on the New York Times bestseller list multiple times, and they were all lamenting the fact that the good news is they were getting great exposure and their names were becoming household words. The bad news is the terms of their publishing agreements were such that they weren't making very much money. So they wanted to have a foot in both camps. They wanted to be able to publish some books to make themselves famous and to ring the cherries on the New York Times bestseller list, and some books to actually bring in some revenue, because if you can make 7.5 cents on the dollar or 10 cents on the dollar with a professional, with a traditional publishing house, and you can make 70 cents on the dollar going in the other direction.
That's huge.
That's a non-trivial difference.
Yeah.
It's literally almost it's an order of magnitude different.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, there's things you have to do. You have to get professional cover design. You have to get professional layout. You have to do all these different things. And it's like there's some expenses involved. But if you do it right, you can produce a professional product, and you can even get it into the same distribution channels. You can get it into Ingram and Baker and Taylor and things like that. You can get into those distribution channels. You can get into bookstores. You can do all these things that people tell you can't do as an independent publisher. But here's what happens. People pick up the book and they go, hey, and then they scan the barcode on the back, or they look at the ISBN on the back, they look it up, and it tracks to one guy working in his garage. And it's like, and then they go, okay, this kind of seems a little hinky. So we thought, how cool would it be if we got a bunch of award-winning and New York Times best-selling authors, and we put them all together in an authors collective, and we created our own publishing imprint, and we, do our own kind of cross-pollinated marketing and things of that nature. But we insisted on professional quality covers and professional quality layout, professional editing, all the things that make books good. We already know they're great authors. They're there for a reason, and put it all together. And then when somebody picks it up and scans the back of the book, and they go, Brave Ship Books, I never heard of that. And they look up the ISBN, and then suddenly it's it's New York Times bestselling author Graham Brown, and it's New York Times bestselling author George Galderisi, and it's New York Times bestselling author Dick Couch, and it's award-winning author Thomas Mays. And I mean, Thomas Mays was up for the Hugo Award, and that ain't no joke.
That's no joke, man. That when you look at the stable of authors from Brave Ship Books, you really go, holy crap! That's pretty amazing stuff.
So we're a registered imprint, and we're technically a publisher, but what we really are is a collective of authors. We all want to help each other get to the finish line. We all want to help each other
make some
good money, and we all want to help each other find an audience. And
cheers to that, man. Cheers to that, brother.
It turns out with a lot of people working together and everybody rowing in the same direction, you get a lot farther than you get rowing alone.
Definitely. Hey, so let's raise a glass. Jeff, you have gotten through the traditional portion of the interview where we were talking space, we were talking Russians, we were talking the Damocles agenda, and now we're going to ask you some of the lightning questions where we'll ask you some stupid stuff.
Yeah, because that's what we're good at.
So that's the whole point. We want you to drink and then hopefully give us the stupid answers back.
I got
you won't. You
came to the right place. I got stupid answers.
Oh yeah. Oh, then this is gonna be good.
We're doing what we do best.
Well, I don't think you can go wrong with an answer to this first question.
Yeah.
So Jeff, you have the choice to fly on Dragon, Blue Origin, or Spaceship Two. Which do you choose?
I'm totally flying Dragon. You mean Crew Dragon?
Yeah, Crew Dragon. Yeah.
Dragon.
Not going up.
Blue Origin and Spaceship Two, those are fantastic, but those are suborbital. Dragon
suborbital, yeah. So is Blue Origin gonna go into orbit, or is it always gonna be suborbital? And they get like the Glenn Shepard or Shepard Glenn, I forget what the name of it is. That's the orbital one.
Yeah, I feel like Blue Origin is trying to get the orbital. I feel like that's in their business plan.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too.
But I think what SpaceX is doing is it gets me excited. I watch the launches with my son and then the landings too all the time. All right, so here's number 2. If an EMP were to strike the entire USA, not just individual cities, but the entire USA, and shut everything down, where or what is Jeff doing?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. Jeff is the first thing Jeff is going to do is regret that he doesn't have nearly as many canned peaches and bottles of water as well. I honestly don't know. There are people who are absolutely equipped to. I'm a technical guy. I mean, I was Navy advanced electronics field. I work in. I do most of the stuff I do for DoD now is cybersecurity.
Right.
It's like 99% of the things that I'm good at.
You need electricity.
Not have any application in a world in a country that has been zapped.
Jeff is screwed.
No, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff is. I'm gonna drink my collection of fighter pilots.
That's what I would do. I'm popping the mess stuff I got.
Skinning rabbits.
And then I'm shooting all the squirrels. Squirrel stew. All right, you're a Navy guy.
Funny, we have made some provisions for getting over a hiccup in
I think you have to. I have.
Well, I mean, just reading the Damocles agenda and watching the research made my wife go, you know what? We really need more.
Maybe some.
We really need more
freeze-dried food. And some water.
And she ain't wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we know you're a Navy guy. So submarines, destroyers, cruisers, or aircraft carriers. If you had to eliminate one class of ship from the Navy, which would it be?
Cruisers.
Cruisers.
Yeah.
Gone. So the
that was my
Aegis
guess
cruiser's
too.
gone, huh? Not the aircraft carrier. I thought maybe the aircraft carrier. I don't know.
Well, the aircraft carrier does something that I think nothing else in the world does now. The aircraft carrier projects power in a way that just having one off your coast. First of all, the idea that the Navy can put an aircraft carrier 14 miles off your coast and basically strike any square foot of ground that it wants to inside your territory is scary to a lot of people. There's a reason that aircraft carriers can go into somebody else's territory and establish a no-fly zone, because they can establish and hold air superiority in places where, they bring their own landing field with them.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And there's in fact, I think in maybe in the Damocles agenda, somebody says something like an aircraft carrier can blot out the sun, which isn't quite true. And don't get me wrong, it's not that aircraft carriers are invulnerable, because they're not.
Yeah.
It's not that they're the answer to everything, because they're not. Like the battleship, there was a time in history where the dreadnought, the battleship, was the end all be all of naval
Not
force
anymore.
protection.
Yeah.
And that basically changed. Between the attack on Pearl Harbor and the Battle of the Coral Sea, which was the first time in history that two battle groups had warred without ever sighting.
Yeah.
The entire thing took place over the horizon.
Cruisers are going the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah.
There you go.
And the only reason I specifically chose cruisers is because the only cruisers that we have right now are the Ticonderogas. And as impressive as the Tycos are, and those are badass boats, they're coming to the end of their operational life.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the destroyers we've got in the fleet, the Arleigh Burkes, the Flight 2 Arleigh Burkes, the Flight 3s and Flight 4s that are coming online, they have more firepower and a full steel superstructure as opposed to aluminum superstructure. I think they're more technically advanced, and I think they can take a punch better, and I think they can project power better. I don't want to lose cruisers, but if I got to lose something, I can't give up submarines, because because you give up submarines, you won't have any destroyers, and because the other guy's submarines will eat your lunch.
There it is. There it is. Right. Cruisers gone.
The best thing to hunt a submarine with is another submarine.
Another submarine.
The best thing is an aircraft.
And then
the best thing is a destroyer, and it ain't a close third.
Yeah. All right, my turn. All right.
Okay.
What is the biggest no-no personal item you should never bring aboard a submarine?
Wow.
It's
I was gonna say tuna fish sandwich, but I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know what the answer to that is. I've only actually been deployed on a submarine once, and just for a few days. It was for a cruise swap. I spent most of my time chasing submarines and not aboard submarines. As much research as I've done, I've never come across that particular question. That's interesting. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out the answer to that and sneak that into a book.
Maybe a Drakkar cologne or something.
Unless you want to put it into a book.
All right, sweet. Now, Ray, he's going to name the character after me to bring something that's a no-no. All right. What was the biggest screw up you ever witnessed by a brand new ensign?
The biggest screw up I ever witnessed by a brand new ensign. There is a thing that Navy ships do called unreps, underway replenishment. And if you're not familiar with it, it's basically, you ever seen in-flight refueling for aircraft?
Yeah, it's a big cable.
I've been in the cockpits for those. It's crazy.
Yeah, two ships side by side.
Yeah.
You'll have your oiler, it'll maybe a TAKE or an AOE or whatever class of ship, but whatever ship is carrying the oil and the supplies will be the guide ship. And they'll run on a course, and you come alongside, and you literally, they fire over messenger lines, and it's like they use an M14, but it's got a particular gas cartridge in it. It fires over a little rubber thing called a monkey, or a monkey fist, and it's got it's basically just a blunt rubber bullet that's about like that.
Yeah.
Maybe half the size of a beer can kind of thing. And it fits in a special adapter on the end of the M14 barrel, and it's attached to basically parachute cord or something thinner than parachute cord. It's a fine nylon cord. Yeah. Carries it over. You use that to bring over a heavier line, and that to bring over a heavier line, and eventually you haul over these cables, and you attach the cables to your stations. You haul over the hose. You hook them up. Anyway, anybody who's ever seen this, first of all, there's 800 ways to get killed doing this. Just so you know. This is it's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. There's like 800 ways.
Imagine getting hit by it in the head.
Well, that's not the dangerous part. Believe me, there are so many ways that this can go wrong. But the Navy is really, really, really good at it. And we had a second-class petty officer on one of the ships that I was on, a second-class bosun mates. And bosun mates are as much flack as they get. Bosun mates are freaking experts at rigging and at rigging cables and things like that. Right. And they are just, and a second-class bosun mate probably knows an unrep rig backwards and frontwards. He can probably build one. and they're just so freaking good at this. And this junior ensign comes out during the middle of operations and decides to take over control from, and I'm not going to tell you what ship it was on, decides to take over control of this underway replenishment station from a second-class petty officer. And
Did oil go everywhere?
so, well, no, it didn't. But the thing is, he could have gotten people killed because he didn't know what he was doing. He just felt like it was time to exert his commissioned officer authority, and this was not the place for it.
God, dude, that's crazy.
Anyway, our skipper actually booted him off the ship and ended up bouncing around various shore commands while they were figuring out what to do with him because our captain wouldn't let him back aboard. But that was the worst screw up I've ever seen. He could have killed a bunch of people, himself included.
Oh man! All right, number 3. This is this one.
Serious question.
Yeah, this is pretty serious.
Serious question.
What is in Davy Jones's locker?
A Russian
Based on
EMP.
what I've seen in other Navy lockers, I'm going to guess that there is contraband in there.
Yeah.
There's underwear in there that should have been washed 3 weeks ago, and there's stuff in there that the sailor that Davy Jones, who owns the locker, has no idea is in there. I guarantee you, there's unwashed socks and unwashed underwear in there.
You want to know what's in Mike's locker?
Yeah.
No, that's a whole. That's a different.
Dark. That's another show.
That's
I
the
might need
dark
to drink
episode.
more before I get to know the answer.
Yeah,
to
you
that.
might have to. There's
Definitely.
an entry fee too. Yeah.
But we're gonna raise a glass, Jeff. You just drained your glass. So pour another one because we're gonna raise a glass to you, sir. It is a long time coming. The Damocles Agenda. It's a fantastic read. You're a fantastic author.
Oh, thank you.
Raising a glass to you, sir. Cheers.
Absolutely.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much. That's raised to you too.
Michael,
Sir.
we had Jeff Edwards on the show talking the Damocles Agenda,
Perfect.
EMPs,
Yes.
space stations,
Mm-hmm.
Russians,
Yep. Maybe
Tom
some clean
Clancy-esque. Yeah, Tom Clancy-esque type book, techno-thriller.
Yes.
Loved it. We had a great conversation with Jeff. Talked about some scary stuff. Talked about some cool stuff.
Yeah.
But raise a glass. We got a cat walking around in the back.
Making
To
that
Jeff
appearance.
Edwards, fantastic book. Sean, we missed you today, but
That's right.
You think he's at the Cayman Islands? Go figure.
Yeah,
Jeez.
right here we are working.
Yeah, no. But
That's a good book. Cheers. Say yes. 1, 2, and go.
it's gonna be a one take Jake type
Yeah,
of deal.
we'll see about that.
No, Tom, please. I have a lot of time here. Michael.
Hang on 1 second. Somebody just rang my damn doorbell.
Anyway, Michael.
Oh, hang on. You're frozen. You're kind of in a Max Headroom look kind of thing going on here.
Do I look okay? Am I here?
This is the outro for Jeff Edwards and the Damocles Agenda. And this is Chris, sporting a summer look. A little bit of burnt, a little bit of white. You can't tell what parts were sitting out in the sun for too long, but I can take a big guess. And here we go.
You don't want to
3,
see those parts.
2. Oh, yes, I do. Now.
Take 2. Oh.
You said one take, and I knew it wasn't going to happen.